All right, good evening and welcome to the February 20th, 2023 Zoning Hearing Master Meeting. I'm Pamela Jo Hatley and I'll be serving as your hearing master this evening. Before we get started, if you would please stand as you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, again, welcome to the February 20, 2023 Zoning Hearing Master Meeting. And if you have any devices this evening that make noise of any kind, please silence those at this time. And I would like to introduce Mr. Brian Grady of the Hillsborough County Development Services Department. He will introduce staff and any agenda changes.
Good evening, Madam Hearing Officer. Again, for the record, Brian Grady, Hillsborough County Development Services. Before I go through the withdrawals and continuances and changes of the agenda, joining us at dais tonight are to my left, Mary Dorman with the County Attorney's Office. To her left, Carl Lanos with the Hillsborough County City County Planning Commission. We also have Development Service staff joining us tonight, Isis Brown, Chris Granda-Leonard, Sam Ball, and Tim Lampkin. And with Transportation Review, joining us virtually are Richard Perez and Alex Steady. We do not have any changes to tonight's agenda, although I will note for purposes of the hearing tonight, B2 is a remand item that Hearing Officer Finch will be hearing. That's her only case, so we'll take up B2 first in front of B1. Other than that, there's no other change of the agenda, so I'll go to the published withdrawals and continuances beginning on page 4 of the agenda. First item is item A1, major mod application 22-0671. This application is out of order to be heard and has been continued to the March 20th, 2023 Zoning Hearing Master Hearing. Item A2, rezoning PD 22-0856. This application is being continued by the applicant to the March 20th, 2023 Zoning Hearing Master Hearing. Item A3, rezoning PD 22-1082. This application is out of order to be heard and has been continued to the March 20th, 2023 Zoning Hearing Master Hearing. Item A4, major mod application 22-1116. This application will be continued by staff to the March 20th, 2023 Zoning Hearing Master Hearing. Item A5, major mod application 22-1126. This application will be continued by staff to the March 20th, 2023 Zoning Hearing Master Hearing. Item A6, rezoning PD 22-1204. This application will be continued by the applicant to the March 20th, 2023 Zoning Hearing Master Hearing. Item A7, major mod application 22-1236. This application will be continued by the applicant to the March 20th, 2023 Zoning Hearing Master Hearing. Item A8, major mod application 22-1239. This application is out of order to be heard and has been continued to the March 20th, 2023 Zoning Hearing Master Hearing. Item A9, rezoning PD 22-1257. This application is out of order to be heard and has been continued to the March 20th, 2023 Zoning Hearing Master Hearing. Item A10, rezoning PD 22-1330. This application is out of order to be heard and has been continued to the March 20th, 2023 Zoning Hearing Master Hearing. Item A11, rezoning PD 22-1337. This application is being withdrawn from the Zoning Hearing Master process. Item A12, major mod application 22-1340. This application is being continued by staff to the March 20th, 2023 Zoning Hearing Master Hearing. Item A13, rezoning PD 22-1390. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the March 20th, 2023 Zoning Hearing Master Hearing. Item A14, major mod application 22-1392. This application is being continued by the applicant to the March 20th, 2023 Zoning Hearing Master Hearing. Item A15, rezoning PD 22-1401. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the April 17th, 2023 Zoning Hearing Master Hearing. Item A16, rezoning standard 22-1431. This application is being continued by the applicant to the April 17th, 2023 Zoning Hearing Master Hearing. Item A17, rezoning PD 22-1497. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the April 17th, 2023 Zoning Hearing Master Hearing. Item A18, major mod application 22-1501. This application has been continued by the applicant at the March 20th, 2023 Zoning Hearing Master Hearing. Item A19, rezoning PD 22-1503. This application out of order to be heard and is being continued to the March 20th, 2023 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A20, major mod application 22-1510. This application out of order to be heard and is being continued to the March 20th, 2023 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A21, major mod application 22-1543. This application out of order to be heard and is being continued to the March 20th, 2023 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A22, rezoning PD 22-1577. This application is out of order to be heard and has been continued to the March 20th, 2023 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A23, rezoning PD 22-1604. This application has been continued by the applicant to the June 20th, 2023 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A24, rezoning PD 22-1636. This application is being withdrawn from the zoning hearing master process. Item A25, rezoning PD 22-1637. This application out of order to be heard and is being continued to the March 20th, 2023 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A26, major mod application 22-1638. This application will be continued by the applicant to the March 20th, 2023 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A27, major mod application 22-1639. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the March 20th, 2023 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A28, rezoning PD 22-1640. This application out of order to be heard and is being continued to the March 20th, 2023 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A29, rezoning PD 22-1647. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the March 20th, 2023 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A30, rezoning standard 22-1654. This application will be continued by staff to the March 20th, 2023 zoning hearing master hearing. And the last item, A31, rezoning standard 22-1681. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the March 20th, 2023 zoning hearing master hearing. That concludes all withdrawals and continuances.
All right, thank you, Mr. Grady. All right, so the procedures tonight will be as follows. First of all, the agenda consists of items that require a public hearing by a hearing master before going to the Board of County Commissioners for a final decision. I will conduct a hearing on each item today and will submit a written recommendation. My written recommendation will be filed with the clerk of the board within 15 working days after the conclusion of today's public hearing. The Board of County Commissioners will consider the record of today's public hearing and my recommendation and will make a final decision on the application at a publicly noticed meeting on a date and time set by the Board of County Commissioners. The hearings today will be informal. I will ask questions related to the scope of direct testimony and may call and question witnesses as I deem appropriate. I will decide all questions of procedure. I will take evidence, but will exclude evidence that is irrelevant, immaterial, or unduly repetitious. Evidence may be presented in written form, and all testimony shall be under oath. Hearsay evidence may be used to supplement or explain other evidence, but shall not be sufficient alone to support a finding of fact unless it would be admissible over objections in a civil court action. The presentation order today shall be as follows. First of all, the county staff, Mr. Grady, will introduce each item. Then the applicant and the applicant's witnesses will have 15 minutes to present the proposal. County Development Services will have 5 minutes to present its findings and recommendations. Planning Commission will have 5 minutes to present its findings of compliance or non-compliance with the comprehensive plan. Proponents will have 15 minutes to present arguments in support of the proposal. Opponents will have 15 minutes to present arguments against the proposal. County staff will then have 5 minutes to present any amended recommendations, and the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal and summation. The 15 minutes for proponents and opponents is the total time allotted among them. So if there are a number of persons who wish to speak, the 15 minutes will be distributed among those persons. If there are a number of persons who wish to speak to an item, you may wish to designate a single spokesperson to represent your views. When you come to the microphone tonight, please first state your name and address for the record. The meeting is being recorded, so please speak into the microphone so that your testimony can be recorded. When you're finished speaking, please see the clerk here to my left to sign in for the record. Now we'll hear from the County Attorney's Office. who will present the legal requirements for requesting oral argument at the public meeting where the Board of County Commissioners will make a final decision.
Mary Dorman from the County Attorney's Office. Tonight's public hearing is the first step of a two-step rezoning process. This hearing is the time for rezoning applicants and interested parties to present testimony and evidence. Any evidence presented tonight will be the complete factual record of each application, and no additional evidence can be introduced after the closing of each application. The second step of the rezoning process is a public meeting before the Board of County Commissioners, where the board will make a decision on each application heard tonight. Tonight's applications are scheduled to be heard by the board at its April 11th, 2023 land use meeting. When considering applications, the board will only review the record created at tonight's hearing and the recommendation made by the land use hearing officer for each application. The land use hearing officer will file a recommendation for each application heard tonight on March 13th, 2023. The Board of County Commissioners has established a policy that directs which rezoning and major modification applications are to be placed on the consent agenda of the board's land use meeting. Applications that propose to add density outside the urban service area, applications that are on roadways with a failing level of service, and applications that have had evidence or testimony provided to the record by a non-applicant party of record either prior to or at the public hearing tonight are not qualified for placement on the consent agenda. Applications which do not have consistent recommendations of approval or denial are also not qualified to be placed on the consent agenda. The board shall allow public testimony by parties of record at its meeting to consider the land use hearing officer's recommendation for any item on the regular agenda. Any public testimony shall be limited to the record of the proceedings before the land use hearing officer unless additional evidence has been found admissible in accordance with Section 10.03.04D of the Land Development Code. A party of record is an individual who fits into at least one of the following four categories. First, an individual who is present tonight and presents testimony or documentary evidence. Second, an individual certified by the U.S. Postal Service as having been mailed notice of tonight's hearing. Third, an individual who submitted documentary evidence to the master file at least 2 business days prior to tonight's hearing. Or fourth, an individual who submitted documentary evidence by proxy at tonight's hearing. Again, the content of oral argument before the board shall be limited to the content of the testimony and other evidence submitted verbally or in writing to the land use hearing officer tonight. It is the role of the county attorney's office to ensure that only individuals who have met these requirements are allowed to speak before the board and to ensure that no new evidence or testimony is introduced or allowed at the board's public meeting. For these reasons, please make sure that all information you wish the board to consider at its public meeting is entered into tonight's record.
Thank you, Ms. Dorman. All right, all testimony tonight must be under oath. So if you plan to speak tonight, would you please stand and raise your hand and I will swear you in. If there are any online who wish to speak, please stand and raise your hand to be sworn in as well. All right. Do you swear the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Grady, would you please call the first case?
As we discussed at the beginning of the agenda, since Hearing Officer Finch is hearing item B2, the remand case, is the only item she's hearing tonight, we'll take up item B2 first. This is application standard 22-1303. The applicant is David Mullen. The request is zoned from AS1 to commercial general. Madam Hearing Officer, you'd heard this case before. It was remanded in order to allow for further discussions with our transportation review staff regarding their prior objection to this case. As you will see in the record, those issues were addressed, and with the restriction, staff is supportive of this. Isis Brown will provide staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
All right, thank you, Mr. Grady. Is the applicant here? Good evening, sir. How are you? If you give us your name and address, please.
Sir, could you move the microphone closer to yes? It's not
You
on.
could
You need
move.
to turn
You
on.
could move it towards you, and you need to turn
There
it
you
on.
go.
There you go.
My name is David W. Mullen, professional engineer. I've been hired by the client to basically submit the application for rezoning of the current parcel to commercial. The argument is that there are several other businesses adjacent, fairly close to this property. One is at Guerrero Auto Sales, 4114 James L. Redmond Parkway. There's LS Curve Service at 4206 James L. Redmond Parkway. There is Dollar General at 102 Colson Road, Plant City, Florida. Austin Strawberry Exchange, 107 Holloway Drive, Plant City, Florida. Ray's Smoke Mullet at 4511 James L. Redmond Parkway in Plant City. We have since gone over our request with the zoning board and with transportation, and we have worked out some of the prior issues that there were involving this parcel, and we are in agreement to the agreement for a single entry with, separation to allow access to the rear parcel of the property.
All right. Thank you so much. Does that complete your presentation?
Yes.
All right. If you
Yes,
could
it
please
does.
sign in with the clerk's office. Thank you so much. Development Services.
Good evening, Isis Brown, Hillsborough County Development Services. The request in this case was existing AS1 to commercial general. Initially, the application was remanded at the January BOCC land use hearing meeting to further address objections raised by the transportation staff review. The applicant has since offered up some restrictions limiting the parcel to one access to build in accordance with the Hillsborough County standards for the road to access the parcel to the east. Based on the restrictions offered up by the applicant, the recommended transportation review staff originally objected to the application due to concerns regarding a number and design of access to the parcel to John L. Redmond Parkway. In response, as part of the remand, the applicant has offered the following restrictions. 1, access to the subject site will be restricted to only one access on James L. Redmond Parkway and will be built as a roadway consistent with the Hillsborough County standards. With this restriction and transportation staff no longer having an objection to the application, based on this, staff finds the request approvable.
All right. Thank you. And because this remand pertains to the transportation comments, Mr. Steady or Mr. Ratliff, did they want to comment? I've read their agency comments, and it's clear to me. I just wanted to give them an opportunity.
I believe Alex is standing by. I don't know if he's online or not, but...
I'm online. Good evening, Madam Hearing Officer. This is Alex Steady, Development Services. I'm here to answer any questions, but the restrictions, they've complied with our concerns, both of our concerns for access and the county standard roadway, and they've both been addressed with those restrictions. So I'm here to answer any questions if you have.
No, not at this time, but thank you for those comments. I appreciate it. We'll go to the Planning Commission.
Carlianos with Planning Commission staff. This rezoning request, again, as stated by the Development Services staff, was remanded. At the current state, there were no comprehensive plan related issues with regards to the remand request, but I am prepared to give a full presentation if you need so.
Just if you could focus, I understand the Planning Commission staff's finding is still of inconsistency, correct?
That is correct.
All right, and if you could focus on that rationale, given the block frontage of commercial that's already existing on that James L. Redmond roadway.
Correct, okay. So currently, the site doesn't meet CLC, so it is not consistent with Flu Objective 22 or the subsequent policies. It is not located within the required distance from an intersection mode, a qualifying one. James L. Redmond Parkway and Colson Road is located about 1,400 linear feet away from the subject site, which is greater than 660-foot distance that is required by Future Land Use Element Policy 22-2. Now, the applicant did request a waiver. They basically stated that it would be complementary to the surrounding uses and it would bring more traffic and revenue. Planning Commission staff is not in support of the CLC waiver. In addition, the proposed rezoning would allow for commercial uses that directly conflicts with these goals and objectives. The area is mostly agricultural and single-family in uses, and as it currently states, the proposed use actually will proliferate strip commercial development in the area. And it's, again, as stated, it's generally agricultural, rural residential development patterns. So this is not something that is consistent with the goals, objectives, or of the comprehensive plan. And currently, based upon those considerations and from the previous hearing and the documentation in the county records, Planning Commission staff finds its proposed rezoning inconsistent with the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan.
Let me just ask you one follow-up
Sure.
question, and that is, I understand the qualifying intersection is Colson, is that correct?
Correct.
With James Redmond Parkway. And so when you have, just looking at the zoning map, the significant amount of already zoned CG parcels between Colson north to Kilgore, what is that policy in the plan that addresses block frontage if you don't meet commercial locational criteria?
If you don't meet commercial locational criteria, you can apply for the waiver. However, it needs to be compatible with the surrounding uses. On top of that, we're looking at avoidance of strip commercial patterns, which is one of the policies in the comprehensive plan. By adding more commercial of this type, it actually generates more strip commercial patterns, which is something that we're trying to avoid. Now, we would prefer that, or we support usually policies or proposed development that is consistent with the comp plan, and that means kind of targeting areas closer to the CLC meeting the commercial locational. But in this case, it doesn't. There was really no rationale behind the previous approvals for the other CG and CN uses to the north. We didn't find any type of rational nexus behind of why those were approved previously. I can tell that it had been several years ago, and as we look through it, they really didn't cite a lot of comprehensive plan policies during that time. However, we are taking a thorough look at this, and we feel like since the area is more rural, and it's just incompatible with that surrounding uses. On top of the site plan that we were looking at, there was many issues with it, particularly with the residential component to the east, I believe. It's agricultural and single family, and then on top of that, you have all these mixture of zoning. So you have agricultural single family AS1, and it's directly to the east, south, and west of the site. So there's a few mixture of uses in there, but it's not really consistent with the development pattern in that area.
All right, thank you for that clarification, I appreciate it. At this time, we'll call for anyone who would like to speak in support. Is anyone in favor that would like to address this application? Sir, would you like to speak in support? Yeah. Come forward and give us your name and address, please. I'm not sure the microphone is on. There you go. Perfect. If you could just state your name and address again.
Hello? Okay. My name is Tanner Tavlan, and I'm the co-owner. Actually, my sister is the main holder on the title. And I heard the discussion, but the problem is her sayings, it's not an agricultural place. There is no cows, there is no strawberry fields, nothing. They just built general store right next to us. Dollar General. 400 houses on 300 yards from us. And big Circle K coming. What's the argument? I think all this stuff, and then they cross the street, 50,000 square foot warehouse, and all surrounded by commercial. I think we do all respect, they have same issue, the result. That's all.
All right. Thank you for your comments. I
You're
appreciate it.
welcome.
If you could please sign in with the clerk's office. Anyone else, either in the room or online, that would like to speak in support? Seeing no one, is there anyone in opposition to this request? Oh, did you want to speak in support? Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Jade Loy. I represent the owner.
Ma'am, could you provide your address for the record?
I'm sorry, would you?
Could you provide your,
Yes, 625 East North Broadway, Columbus, Ohio. For,
Thank you.
yes. First of all, the parcel due east to the parcel in question is also owned by the same owner, which is Mr. Taban here. And then his sister, Tulin Tablan, also owned the parcel due east. And she obviously is for the rezoning. The parcel due south of the parcel in question is agricultural, yes, but there is a buffer there already. There is a 320 feet, 6-foot high fence that go right across from James Redmond Parkway all the way towards the back. So that is a buffer. The property due north of the said property is, I believe it's AS1, but the owner is willing to put up a buffer there if, the board requires him to. So he can either put a fence up, a 6-foot fence up 320 feet, into the property from James Redmond, or he can plant bushes, as a buffer. I hope that would satisfy the Planning Commission. But as far as the other surrounding area, other surrounding parcel of the parcel in question right now, it's predominantly mixed usage of commercials, but basically it's mixed usage. So basically that's what I have to say. And I think Mr. Dave Mullen has addressed all the mixed usages surrounding the parcel also.
All right. Well,
If-
thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. You have any other question, feel free to ask us. I can
will.
answer anything.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I appreciate it. If you could please sign in. All right. So that closes testimony in support. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition?
I want to speak in support.
Okay. While you're coming up, is there anyone else who would like to speak in support of this? All right. Yes, sir. If you could give us your name and
I
address,
don't
please.
believe the gentlemen have been sworn in, so.
Oh, is there anyone in the room that would like to speak on this case or any case hereafter that was not in the room to be sworn in? If you could please stand and raise your right hand. All right, there you go. You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you so much. Please continue with your name and address, please. And
It's Ray
comments.
West, 13716 Glen Harbor Road.
Thank you, sir.
I just have questions. I know this property and I know this gentleman. There's a lot of commercial on both sides of this piece of property. And I'm confused as how we're controlling them not being able to put this business here. I served in the Army my whole life, and I thought that this is what we fought for, was for people like Mr. Taban to come here and be able to put a business. And amongst other businesses, it's not like he's trying to do this in the middle of where houses are at. Now, my daughter lives in one of the residential properties that he has that would not be affected, but it would be close to this place. And I don't see an issue with it. So I don't understand how, we claim to be one of the greatest countries in the world, and I believe that with all my heart. I lost a lot of my friends in Iraq and Afghanistan. I don't see how we can stop somebody when you have the same things going on, not miles away, like literally, you can stand in the driveway and see the Dollar General stand. You can stand in the driveway and you can see the car lot. It doesn't make sense to me how we can say, oh, well, they can't do it. What are we representing when we tell somebody, come to America, live the dream? Oh, you can't do that, but they can. It doesn't make sense to me. So can I get clarification as to why they won't let somebody do something like that? It doesn't make sense.
Sir, this is part of the process where we take public testimony, and the county staff would be happy to provide you a copy of the staff report with the backup of why one staff is supporting this application and the other planning staff is not. Their reasons are all written down. It's public record. It's very accessible, and they'd be glad to give you a copy of it. But this is part of the process of rezoning property. And so this first step, we hear all of the testimony, and then we make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, and then that board decides whether the rezoning will be granted or not. So the decision is not made tonight.
Okay.
But I appreciate you coming down, and thank you
I
again.
would like a copy of that if you
Yep,
don't mind.
absolutely. We can help you get that.
Okay.
And if you could sign in with Allison, she's right there at the clerk's office, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right, anyone else in support that would like to speak tonight? All right, thank you. Anyone in opposition to this request? Seeing no one online? All right, then we'll go back to Development Services. Mr. Grady, anything else?
Nothing further.
Okay. The applicant then, sir, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal if you'd like it, but you don't have to take it.
I'm sorry, but after this,
Could you give us your name just one more time?
Tanner Tavlon,
Thank you.
and I really wish they go through this process. And my sister, her husband, he just retired after 35 years. ExxonMobil carrying oil all over the world. And I'm tired. I've been working in the construction 30 years. And now I'm in the business like cabinets, importing from overseas. I mean exporting. And anyway, I need a place to put my, all my stuff waiting in the containers. You know, getting rotting there, you know, bending all the cabinets and stuff. I need a place. I can't go rent a place $10,000 a month. I have a place there. Why I can't make it commercial? How I'm gonna create a over traffic in the James L. Redmond Parkway? Wholesale. You know, people gonna come, take their stuff, leave. And only 2 people gonna work in the warehouse. And I think, honestly, this needs to go through. I really need it. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your testimony. Then with that, we'll close application rezoning. Sir, if we could be, sir. Excuse me? You need to come forward to the microphone. And give us your name, please.
David Mullen. I want to further state that businesses like Dollar General and the other ones adjacent to us generate 10 times the traffic we will generate. We are going to be a warehouse with minimal traffic, minimal impact to James L. Redmond Parkway. We cannot stop progress, and I feel that we are heading to a wrong direction when we allow other businesses similar that will have more traffic, more issues on James L. Redmond Parkway than our warehouse. And I feel almost appalled that we are being subjected to this other look that when we clearly had demonstrated this area is clearly going commercial, and you are trying to restrict us from putting on a place that is really not going to impact James L. Redmond Parkway at all. So I just want to make that statement known.
I appreciate your comments. Thank you so much. With that, we'll close rezoning standard 22-1303, the remand, and I'll turn the hearing back over to Hearing Officer Halley.
Thank you, Ms. Finch. All right, we're ready to call the next case, Mr. Grady.
The next item is agenda item B1, rezoning standard 22-1070. This is a request to rezone from ASC1 to commercial general with restrictions. Madam Hearing Officer, this case was remanded by the board with the direction for the applicant to look at clarifying the range of uses they were proposing for this project. The applicant has done that with restrictions. Chris Grandin and I will provide staff overview of staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
All right, thank you.
Good evening, Hearing Officer Todd Pressman, 200 2nd Avenue South, number 451 in St. Petersburg. As staff has indicated, we work closely with the staff to bring the case back on remand from the prior commission, which comes now forward with staff recommendation support from both the agency and the department. So I will go through this quickly, and I've entered this in the record. This is 221070. We're located in the Sefner-Dover general area. This is a little closer view of it, and this is the project site outlined in red by the property appraiser. There's actually two parcels that compose of the site. This is the existing site. We're seeking rezoning from ASC 1 to CG. Again, it's a remand from the November 3rd, clarifying restricted uses. Planning Commission Development Services both support. These are the specific restrictions. They're, of course, a part of the staff report, and I've also entered this into the record. But primarily, it's business professional offices with some specifics and clarification, indoor uses, also specifically and more clearly defined, and operating hours. The zoning map along the roadway is commercial in nature and manufacturing. Existing uses include trucks and rentals, both in the CG and the CN. The PDC is recorded from 1988 plan development, which I've had the record here for you as well. Abutting on the west is a antenna farm. There are 3 specific antennas that I have visualized for you here. That's abutting on the west. Existing a CG on the east is this use. Existing on the CG is this use. And those are the zoning categories as laid out along the roadway. Opposite side of the roadway is CSX railroad tracks. They parallel the roadway throughout that part of the county. This is just a quick visualization of that roadway or railway. The traffic count's arterial, it is an arterial roadway. Per the county records, it carries anywhere from 14,300 vehicles per day to 11,200 vehicles per day, depending upon which side you take the count. And the roadway is also a specific and designated truck route in the county. Planning Commission notes they support the locational waiver, meets the intent of the Sefner-Mango Community Plan, and they find it consistent. Under Sefner-Mango Community Plan, then it notes that commercial development should be directed to US 19 and Martin Luther King Boulevard corridors, encourage revitalization and redevelopment of older existing commercial areas and uses. And this is just a visualization that the site has had activity over many years, at least by aerial in 1999. So with that, we ask your consideration and our approval of the request. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Don't have any for you right now, Mr. Pressman. Thank you. All right, Development Services.
Good evening. Chris Grandin, planner with Development Services. I'm here to present application 22-1070, remand. The application was remanded at the November 3rd Board of County Commissioners Land Use meeting in order for the applicant to consider further clarifying proposed uses, as he mentioned. The applicant is proposing to rezone from existing ASC 1 to commercial general restricted. The approximate 4.45 acre property is comprised of 2 parcels, both zoned ASC 1, agricultural single family conventional. The subject parcels are located 200 feet northwest of the intersection of Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and Shady Acres Road. The subject property is designated residential 1 on the future land use map. And regarding to previous compatibility concerns that Development Services had and Planning Commission had, they had the subject site does not meet commercial location criteria, as the nearest qualifying node is at McIntosh and Martin Luther King Boulevard. and is located greater than 300 feet as per policy 22.2 of the future land use element of the comprehensive plan. The applicant has requested a waiver, which is in the record. Also, another compatibility concern, the Seffner-Mango Community Plan discourages retail uses along MLK Boulevard in the rural area and discourages commercial encroachment in residential areas between US 92 and Dr. Martin Luther King. In response to these concerns, the applicant has offered the following mitigating restrictions. The business and/or professional offices, including but not limited to accountants, banks, lawyers, real estate and title companies, as well as the county code definition of business service. Number 2, indoor uses only, as defined in the official county code definition of recreational uses, general indoor, outdoor, for-profit or non-profit recreational uses, and facilities providing sports or recreation opportunities within an enclosed building. Such uses shall include but not be limited to bowling alleys, skating rinks, movie theaters, gymnasiums, fitness centers, dance schools, miniature golf, volleyball, etc., located completely within an enclosed building. Number 3, the operating hours will be restricted to weekdays, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., and weekends, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. With these proposed restrictions, the Planning Commission found the proposed rezoning consistent with the comprehensive plan, and Development Services concurs with that assessment. The proposed restrictions limit retail and lowers the intensity of the potential uses, which provides a transition to the residential neighborhood. The proposed office and indoor uses meet the intent of the Seffner-Mango Community Plan. Also, the restricted operating hours provide noise and traffic congestion relief to the neighboring residential area. Based on the above considerations, staff finds the requested commercial general restricted zoning district compatible with the existing zoning and development pattern in the area. And we would find it approvable for a commercial general restricted, and glad to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you very much. No questions at this time. Thank you. All right, Planning Commission?
Carlianos with Planning Commission staff. Would you like me to do a full testimony, or would you like me to skip and go into the nitty-gritty?
Just, yes, the nitty-gritty. Address the remand and the changes and the findings and the basis for that, please.
Understood.
Thank you.
So in response to the remand directed by the Board of County Commissioners on November 3rd, the applicant is restricting an allowable uses to business and professional office and indoor recreational uses. Planning Commission staff did review the list of the proposed uses, and they are in agreement. So Planning Commission staff also reviewed a waiver because the area has some presence of like CG zoning districts, et cetera, which we found that it was kind of rezoned around 2014 from CN to CG uses and to existing CG uses in the surrounding area. Now, after we reviewed the waiver, we concluded that the proposal is kind of unique, and it has kind of restricted uses that are not commercial general in nature, but more BPO uses, which is business professional office uses, and it's more less intense and traditional, transitional in character. So with that, Planning Commission staff finds that the proposed list of uses and the way the request is right now is consistent with the comprehensive plan. In addition, it's consistent with the Seffner-Mango Community Plan, goals 2 and 3. It specifically calls out for residential, encroachment of commercial uses in residential areas between 92 and Dr. Martin Luther King. It discourages strip commercial, which again, the applicant is proposing business professional office with some indoor recreational uses. So it kind of goes away from that retail strip idea. So on top of that, overall, the proposed rezoning would allow for a development that is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. And it is compatible with the existing and planned development pattern found within the surrounding area. With that said, we did also look at the parcel in front of the subject site. We did notice that it was owned by Florida Department of Transportation. So that's another further indication how we want to keep that development pattern as well. So at this point, based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff is again finding this request consistent with the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, subject to the conditions proposed by the Development Services Department.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Llanos. All right, is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application? Do not hear anyone. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? All right, do not hear anyone. Development Services, anything further?
Nothing further.
Okay. Applicant, anything further? No. That's a no. Okay. Then this will close the hearing on rezoning standard 22-1070.
The next item then is agenda item C1, rezoning standard 22-1221. The applicant is David Wright. The request is rezone from planned development in RSC 6 to a commercial neighborhood zoning district with the restrictions. Chris Granell will provide staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
All right, is the applicant here? This is rezoning 22-1221. Do we have the applicant here or online?
It looks like I've got a Davis Wright, but he's not checked in.
All right. Then Mr. Grady will proceed to the next case, and we'll come back to this one. Maybe Mr. Wright will come online.
And we can also try contacting him.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll go to the next item then. That's C2, rezoning standard 22-1445. The applicant is A&M Investment Trust LLC. The request is rezoned from CN, commercial neighborhood, to commercial general. Isis Brown will provide staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
My name is Ben Benjamin, and trying to, change the land use of CN
Can you
to
state
CG.
your address for the record, please?
2930 South 58th Street, Tampa. And the address for this property is 11553 South 41 Highway. So I own a dealership on 41 and Causeway, and Eminent Dominant is taking it, and I bought this property, me and my partner, expecting to move my dealership toward it. And sadly, we find the zoning is different. And it's a small dealership, and I've been a taxpayer since 2013. And in this dealership, in this place, next door is a motel, and the other place is commercial truck parking, which is commercial. Across the street from me is a warehouse, FAB, and all of them, the CG. And if you look, it's on 41, and it's a corner. And all the places next door of me, they're commercial general, So I don't see what's the reason why this cannot be commercial general. And we're willing to do whatever it takes to do it and keep paying taxes and everything. If not, I don't know what I will do.
Okay.
That's what I have to say.
Okay. Is that all?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you, sir. Please sign in. Thank you. All right. Development Services.
Good evening, Isis Brown, Development Services. The request is to rezone from the existing commercial neighborhood CN zoning district to CG commercial general zoning district. The proposed zoning for CG permits commercial, office, and personal services development on lots of a minimum of 10,000 square feet. To the north of the property are properties zoned CG, RSC 6, and AS1. To the west, RSC 6 with the mobile home overlay district. To the east, CI. And to the south, there's a CI with restrictions, RSC 6 with the mobile home overlay, and RSB Make sure. Okay. Staff finds that the request for the CG zoning district is compatible with surrounding areas and development pattern. The current CN zoning district on the parcel permits a range of commercial uses that are also permitted in the CG zoning district. The parcel is located on the west side of US Highway 41 in an area with commercial zoning district and uses to the north, south, and east. Based on the above consideration, staff finds that the request is approvable. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Brown, just a quick question. And I know this is standard zoning request, not a PD, but the applicant just mentioned that he intends to put a dealership on this property. Is that an allowed use in CG?
Yes, it is.
It is, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's it, thank you. All right, Planning Commission?
Carlianos with Planning Commission staff. The 2.3 acre subject site is located on the west side of South US 41, which is north of Isabel Avenue. Subject site is within the urban service area, and it's within the limits of the Gibsonton and South Shore Area-Wide Systems Community Plan. The applicant is requesting to rezone that subject site from commercial neighborhood to commercial general, and again, to be used as a car dealership and RV rental location. Now, the subject site's future land use classification is office commercial 20, and typical uses within here are office uses, mixed-use developments, some residential as well. And OC 20 is located to the north, east, and south of the subject site. Residential 6 is located to the west, and natural preservation is located to the southwest. The subject site is currently developed with light commercial uses that are located also to the north of the site, and to the south are vacant lands, and to the west is single-family residential dwellings. Light industrial uses are located to the east of the subject site across US 41. Now, the site is currently zoned, again, commercial neighborhood. There are multiple commercial zoning districts within the area. So you have commercial neighborhood, which is, again, short for CN. You have commercial general, CG, and you have commercial intensive, which is CI, all along US 41. To the west, you do have residential single-family conventional 6 and residential show business and agricultural single-family located to the north of the site. Now, the subject property, consistent with policy 1.4. It's compatible with the existing character of the development area, as a number of commercial zoning districts such as CN and CG and CR are located around US 41. And Objective 8 requires that the future land use map, to include land use categories that are outlined in the maximum level of intensity and density range of the permitted land use. So it is consistent with the future land use category. It is consistent with the neighborhood protection policies of Objective 16 and the subsequent policies. The development pattern within that area includes a number of commercial zoning districts. A rezoning to CG would actually reflect a development pattern that concentrates the most intense uses towards US 41 in an arterial road. And then it also concentrates like lesser intense uses further away to the west. The applicant intends on utilizing the subject site for a car dealership, as previously mentioned, which enhances kind of an opportunity for business in the area. As the site is on US 41, a rezoning to CG would also facilitate the enhancement of Gibsonton Community Plan. It meets Goal 4 of the area South Shore Area-Wide Systems Plan, and economic development objectives, which encourages activities that benefits residents, employees, employers, entrepreneurs, etc. So overall, this rezoning would allow for a development that is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, and it is compatible with the existing and planned development pattern found within the area.
All right, thank you very much. So we'll go to the public. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application? All right, I don't hear anyone. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? All right, do not hear anyone. Back to Development Services, anything further?
Nothing further.
All right. Applicant, did you have anything further you wish to add? Okay, that's it then, thank you. This will close the hearing on rezoning standard 22-1445.
Before we go on to the next item, I would ask HTV, is the applicant for C1 standard 221221 online now, Mr. Wright?
I have not seen anyone checked in.
Okay. Received a message the applicant's going to be logging in shortly, so I would suggest we move on to the next item, and then we can come back to, hopefully by then he will have logged in.
All right, thank you, Mr. Grady. That's what we'll do then.
All right, the next item then will be agenda item D1, major mod application 22-0884. The applicant's Francisco J. Otero Cosillo. The request is for a major modification to existing plan development. Tim Lampkin with Development Services will provide staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
Good evening. Francisco Otero Casio, 13014 North Del Mabry Highway. We are requesting a major modification to PD 06-0421 that was recently modified by PRS 18-0977. The site is located at 1306 Southwest 10th Street in Ruskin. The site is located within the urban service area and is located within the limits of the Ruskin Community Plan and within the limits of the South Shore area-wide systems. The site is a total of 3.67 acres and with a future land use of designation as SMU6. The current zoning of the site, PD 06-0421, allows and was originally approved for 21,950 square feet of CG zoning district uses and was reduced to 11,000 square feet via PRS 18-0977. We are requesting a major modification to increase the entitlements to the proposed 17,400 square feet of contractor offices, which are permitted use under the CG zoning district uses. Our petition will include 1, an administrative variance to Hillsborough County Land Development Code 6.04.07, minimum spacing to allow for site access driveway connection at a spacing less than applicable minimum LDC requirement and is recommended for approval by the county engineer. The purpose of this variance is to ensure that the development is provided with reasonable access. 2, a design exception to the Hillsborough County Transportation Manual, TTM Section 1.7, to meet the requirements of Hillsborough County Land Development Code 6.04.03. The design exception is requested from relief from LDC 6.04.03, which states that improvements and upgrading of existing roadways are to conform with standards for new roadways of the same access class. Exception to these standards shall be allowed only where physically impossible for the permittee to comply or otherwise upgrade existing site conditions. All such exceptions shall be approved by the Director of Public Works. A design exception is requested for relief from the above referenced requirements to improve 10th Street to meet new roadway standards for a 2-lane undivided rural collector roadway. As a condition of development approval for the subject project, where in lieu of meeting the full TS7 typical section, alternative mitigation is proposed. Per our traffic analysis and submitted engineered reports by licensed professionals, the deviation from county TS7 standards in regard to lane width does not adversely impact the provision of safe and efficient traffic operating conditions. The deviation from county TS7 standards in regard to the lack of sidewalks on both sides of the road is a significant concern in regard to planned development in close proximity to the commercially oriented corridor of US Highway 41. Therefore, we are proposing to construct 850 square feet of a 10-foot multi-use path on the east side of 10th Street between Woodlawn Estates Avenue and US Highway 41 to mitigate those concerns. The surrounding zoning classifications consist mostly of CG zoning districts. Directly to the north and across Woodland Estates Avenue is a CSX railroad line. Access to 10th Street to the west is a CG warehouse, and adjacent to the east is Zone CG with residential use for mobile homes. We are mitigating with the required buffering with Type B screening pursuant to County Land Development Code, Section 6.06.06. We will meet and or exceed this requirement. We strongly feel our proposed development is compatible with the surrounding community and similar CG zoning sites throughout and will not negatively impact those areas. To summarize, there is a CSX Square Road directly to the north across Woodland Estates Avenue, a CG warehouse directly across to the west, and CG joining to the east, which we are adequately mitigating for the residential mobile home uses. The property does not meet commercial location criteria, and we are requesting a waiver in accordance with the future land use element 22.8 regarding commercial location criteria. We feel our proposal meets the intent of the Hillsborough Land Development Code and respectfully ask for approval of our petition. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Be sure and sign in. All right, Development Services.
Good evening, Tim Lampkin, Development Services. The subject site is located on the southeast corner of Woodland Estates Avenue and 10th Street Southwest intersection. The property, the proposed development is approximately 510 feet north of US Highway 41. South of the site is commercial general zone property. It's developed with a mobile home park. Immediately east of the subject site is a parcel zoned as commercial general and currently developed with a single family home. Immediately north of the subject site, as the applicant stated, is a CSX railroad. Immediately west is 10th Street Southwest, and farther west is a CG zone property. This original plan development was approved in 2006 for the development of a maximum of 21,950 square feet of development to include commercial general uses. Subsequently, in 2018, PRS 18-0977 reduced the permitted square footage from 21,950 to 11,000 square feet of CG uses. The current request is to amend the conditions of approval to allow up to 17,400 square feet of professional services, professional offices, and contractor office uses. Pursuant to Section 6.06.06A, this requires adjacent property developed with a non-conforming residential use to be buffered, determined based upon the residential use. In compliance, the applicant is proposing a 20-foot buffer with type B screening along the eastern property boundary, which is adjacent to the currently developed single-family home. The applicant requests no variations for site design. The applicant does not request any variations to Land Development Code Part 6.06.00. Landscaping and buffering. This site will comply with and conform with all other applicable policies and regulations, including but not limited to the Hillsborough County Land Development Code, Site Development and Technical Manual. As the applicant went over, there's a transportation design exception and administrative variance. The first one is a design exception for 10th Street, which is a substandard collector road, and the second, and the developer will be required to construct an 850 linear feet of a new 10-foot wide multi-use path, as he stated in his presentation. The second is a transportation administrative variance for a minimum connection spacing. This request will allow the proposed location of the project access connection to 10th Street to be within 110 feet of the existing driveway on the east side of the roadway. The LDC requires normally a minimum of 245 feet of spacing. The county engineer did find the above request approvable for PD 22-0884. Staff has not identified any compatibility concerns relative to the surrounding properties. The proposed use is located in an area of both commercial and residential development in close proximity to the subject site. The proposed office use is to be developed at an FAR of 0.13, which is consistent with and below the maximum 0.25 FAR allowed for non-residential development in SMU 6 future land use category. Overall, the proposed rezoning would allow for development that is consistent with the comp plan and the land development code. The proposed project with the proposed conditions is found approvable. And that concludes my presentation unless there are any questions.
No questions for you. Thank you, Mr. Lampkin.
Thank you.
All right, is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application?
We need Planning Commission presentation first.
Oh, did I forget Planning Commission? I'm so sorry. Let's hear from the Planning Commission first. Thank you.
Carla Llanos with Planning Commission staff. The property is located within the urban service area and within the limits of the Ruskin Community Plan and South Shore area-wide systems. Again, the applicant is requesting a major modification to plan development to allow for 17,400 square feet of contractor's office and general use office as well. The subject site has a future land use category of suburban mixed use 6, which is intended to designate areas suitable for urban and suburban in intensity and density of uses, with development typically occurring within the provision of timing of transportation and public facility services as necessary to support the intensities in a particular area. Now, typical uses in the SMU6 are residential, suburban scale neighborhood, commercial office uses, and research corporate parks, etc. The neighborhood commercial uses shall be subject to locational criteria. Office uses are not subject to CLC. Agricultural uses also may be permitted as well. The suburban mixed use 6 future land use category allows for a maximum density of 6 dwelling units an acre or up to 0.25 floor area ratio. Now to the north, northeast, northwest is suburban mixed use 6 future land use category, which is developed with light industrial use. To the south and southeast is office commercial 20 future land use category, which is developed with a mobile home park. To the east is light industrial future land use, which is also developed with a mobile home park. And to the west, southwest is residential 12 future land use category, which is developed with another mobile home park, single family homes, and an auto mechanic shop. Now, according to policy 1.4, compatibility, the subject site is proposing five one-story office buildings between 3,000 and 5,000 square feet each. The proposed site plan is found compatible with the scale of the existing development in the area, which is primarily low-intensity non-residential uses. As previously mentioned, that east of the site is an existing mobile home park. Now, the current site plan reflects a stormwater retention pond and a 40-foot setback to the east between the mobile home park and the proposed buildings to help mitigate for those dissimilar uses. Planning Commission staff did find that the request is also consistent with the neighborhood protection policies and of Objective 16 and the subsequent policies. Office uses provides for an appropriate transition of uses as per policy 16.2 from the auto mechanic shop to the west and the mobile home park to the east as well. Now, again, the subject site does not meet commercial locational criteria. A waiver has been requested with an accompanying justification. Now, the applicant has stated that the proposed commercial uses are compatible with the surrounding properties that are zone CG and CI zoning. Furthermore, the applicant proposes a buffer, as mentioned, between the mobile home park to the east and the proposed building placement. So that's actually really well thought out. Additionally, the proposed list of conditions indicates that no open storage is allowed on the subject site. Now, the proposed the other list of conditions have been thoroughly reviewed and selected to help complement the surrounding area, and it's not intended to introduce intensive uses, but rather encourage a transition of uses. So, Planning Commission staff is recommending approval of this waiver. The request does meet the South Shore area-wide community plan and the Ruskin community plan as well, as it's compatible with the development in the area. There are no objections to the current request for variances or design exceptions proposed by the applicant. And overall, the proposed rezoning would allow for a development that is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, and it's found compatible with the existing and planned development pattern within the area. And I'll answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Llanos. All right, now we'll go to the public. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application? Do not hear anyone. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? All right, do not hear anyone. All right, back to Development Services. Anything further?
Nothing further.
All right, and applicant, anything further? Okay. All right, that will close the hearing then on Major Modification 22-0884.
We'll now go back to agenda item C1, rezoning standard 22-1221. The applicant is David Wright. The request is to rezone from PD to RSC6. The applicant is requesting a commercial neighborhood zoning district with restrictions. Chris Grandillard will provide staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Grady. All right, applicant?
Good evening. David Wright, address is P.O. Box 273417, Tampa 33688. I apologize, I had a mix-up on my calendar. Tonight I'm presenting a request to rezone the subject properties from residential, single-family, conventional, and planned development, allowing office, general commercial restricted uses to commercial neighborhood restricted. The restrictions offered are limiting uses, prohibiting a drive-through, offering enhanced screening, and proposing to locate stormwater retention to the north to provide additional buffering to the residential. All of these restrictions are offered to ensure the proposed commercial neighborhood zoning is compatible with the existing residential to the west, northwest, and north of the subject properties. The subject properties are directly adjacent to single-family residential and multifamily to the north and northwest. A commercial building supply store zone manufacturing is to the east and commercial general to the west. An industrial park zone manufacturing to the south across East Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. The subject site is located on the north side of East Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, which is classified as an arterial roadway and exists today as a commercial corridor. The subject site is located directly on transit routes 37 and 38, with the transit stop located approximately 500 feet to the west on the north side of MLK. The future land use classification of the subject properties is commercial mixed use 12. The CMU 12 future land use allows residential, commercial scale retail, commercial office uses, research corporate park uses, light industrial multipurpose, and clustered residential and or mixed use projects at appropriate locations. Non-residential land uses must be compatible with the residential uses through established techniques of transition by restricting the location of incompatible uses. Compatibility is defined as the characteristics of different uses or activities or design which allow them to be located near or adjacent to each other in harmony. Compatibility does not mean the same as, rather it refers to the sensitivity of development proposals in maintaining the character of existing development. The CMU 12 area shall be urban in intensity and density of uses, with development occurring as the provision and timing, transportation and public facility services necessary to support these intensities and densities are made available. Retail commercial uses shall be clustered at arterial and collector intersections. We respectfully disagree with the Planning Commission staff's finding that the request does not meet the intent of future land use element Objective 16, Policy 16.1, 16.2, 16.3, and 16.5. For 16.1, the proposed list has been extensively restricted and detailed to limit the commercial uses to a less intense neighborhood scale. 16.2 and 16.3, buffering and enhanced screening is proposed directly adjacent to the residential uses to the north. The use to the west is commercial general and medium density multifamily residential. That's important. The adjacent property to the west, folio 65435.0000, is zoned commercial general, allowing more commercial intensity by right than the request. The properties further to the west are the Mariners Cove Court Apartments and Sable Park Apartments that are existing developments at densities of 14 units per acre and 24 units per acre and compatible with the proposed commercial neighborhood restricted zoning. 16.5, the proposed commercial neighborhood restricted zoning is located external to the existing neighborhood and on an arterial roadway. Once again, compatibility is defined as characteristics of different uses or activities or design which allow them to be located near or adjacent to each other in harmony. Compatibility does not mean the same as, rather it refers to the sensitivity of development proposals in maintaining the character of the existing neighborhood. The proposed commercial neighborhoods restricted zoning maintains the character of the existing development when all of the surrounding properties are included in the evaluation in the appropriate context. We prepared a professional and thorough zoning application and worked with staff to narrow the request to achieve compatibility with the surrounding properties. We appreciate the efforts of Development Service staff and their finding of approvable. We appreciate the efforts of Planning Commission staff, however, we respectfully disagree with their finding of inconsistent. We provided notice to the surrounding properties as required by the Land Development Code, and we were not contacted by anyone seeking or objecting to this request. There are also no objections in the party of record file for this application. I appreciate your review of this application and respectfully request your recommendation of approval. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wright, and thank you for addressing the inconsistency findings and those specific policies. And I have to ask you this because it is the applicant's burden to present evidence that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan. You've presented testimony on that, but I need to know what your qualifications are to present testimony on planning issues. Are you a certified planner, or what are your qualifications and experience in that area, please?
My experience, I'm not a certified planner, but I have extensive experience in planning and permitting. Going back to 2002, I was the director of developments for Fairfield Residential Apartments, national multifamily developer, and I was responsible for doing the due diligence and then taking all the projects from the ground stage to planning them and then permitting them or rezoning them if necessary and taking them, giving to our construction department. In addition to that, I've been working at TSP companies for the past 5 years and now serving as president and the sole proprietor of this company.
All right, Mr. Wright, thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right, Development Services.
Chris Groundlenard again, the planner with Development Services, here to present rezoning 22-1221. The applicant is proposing to rezone from the existing planned development and RSC 6 zoning to commercial neighborhood restricted. The approximate 0.85 acre property is comprised of 4 parcels zoned RSC 6, residential single-family conventional, and 1 parcel is zoned PD 850445 with a commercial permitted use. Folios 65446 and 65448 and 65447 have a single-family residence, and the rest of the parcels are vacant. The subject parcels are located at the northwest and northeast corners of East Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and Watson Road. The area consists of single-family and multifamily residential, commercial, and manufacturing. The subject parcels are directly adjacent to single-family residential zoned RSC 6 to the north. To the east, the parcel is adjacent to a commercial building supply store zoned manufacturing. To the west, the parcels are adjacent to commercial zone CG and multifamily residential. To the south, across State Road 574, Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, is an industrial park zone manufacturing. And the subject property is designated commercial mixed use 12 on the future land use map. Development Services and the Planning Commission have compatibility concerns with the single-family residential located north of the subject site. Any potential business in the proposed commercial neighborhood restricted could impact the neighborhood with noise pollution and traffic congestion. The proposed zoning uses are too intense and high traffic for a property with such a close proximity to residential. In response to these concerns, the applicant has offered the following mitigating restrictions. Stormwater retention shall be located on the north side of the properties adjacent to the residential 6 zoned properties. This restriction shall apply to the properties located on both sides of Watson Road. Enhanced screening shall be provided in the form of a 6-foot solid fence or masonry wall between the commercial use and RSC 6 zoning property in addition to a 20-foot buffer with type B screening. This restriction will apply to both sides of Watson Road. Number 3, they will prohibit drive-through. Number 4, the proposed commercial uses shall be restricted to electronic repair, florist shop, locksmith, mail, packaging services. The rest are in the staff report for your review. The proposed restrictions limit intense and high traffic potential uses such as drive-through. The restrictions also enhance the buffering and screening requirements by moving stormwater retention to the north and provide a 6-foot solid fence or masonry wall between commercial use and the residential to the north. This is in addition to land use code buffering and screening requirements. So based on community mixed use 12 future land use classification, the surrounding zoning and development pattern and the proposed uses for the commercial neighborhood restricted zoning district, development review staff finds the request approvable. Be glad to answer any questions you may have.
All right. Don't have any questions for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Planning Commission.
Planning Commission staff, Carly Annis for the record. So the 0.84 subject site is located within the urban service area, and it's within the East Lake Orion Park Community Plan. Now, the applicant is requesting to rezone this property from single-family conventional 6 and planned development to commercial neighborhood with restrictions. The subject site is located within the community mixed-use 12 future land use category, which can be considered for up to 12 dwelling units a gross acre or 0.50 floor area ratio. Now, this future land use category is intended for urban intensity and density of uses, with development occurring as the provision and timing of transportation and public facility services are available and necessary to support these developments. Now, typical uses are not limited to residential, community scale, retail, commercial, office uses, and CMU 12 does surround the subject site on all sides. There is a pocket of urban mixed use 20, which is located to the west, and to the east is additional urban mixed use 20 and public, quasi-public, future land use categories. Now, the current zoning for the property, RSC6 and plan development, the plan development was approved with conditions by the Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners on March 11th of 1986. The RSC6 and PD zoning are located north of the site. Manufacturing is located directly to the east, southeast, and south. And there's a pocket of CG, which is located directly to the west. Now, Planning Commission staff find this request not consistent with the policy of 1.4, which is compatibility. The proposed request would not allow for harmonious-like activities and uses adjacent to the surrounding area of the subject site. It is not consistent with the policy direction. According to Hillsborough County property appraiser data, the existing land uses on the subject site are single-family and a portion is vacant. Single-family and multifamily residential uses are located directly to the north and northwest. A combination of light commercial, light industrial uses are located to the east, southeast, south of the subject site. And there's educational and other light commercial uses located southwest of the subject site. It's directly across east on MLK. Now, the remaining area located west of the subject site utilizes multifamily residential uses. The area is residential in character. So you have residential to the west, you have residential to the north. So this mixture of residential within the vicinity, it uses large and small lot sizes, so it kind of varies. There are notable industrial, again, commercial and educational uses nearby. The proposed rezoning does not meet the intent of FLU Objective 16 and the subsequent policies, although the applicant has submitted a list of restrictions. Several of the restricted uses would still be incompatible with the single-family and multifamily residential uses around the site. The restricted uses would not be enough, or adequate room for buffering, and it wouldn't allow for intense uses within the established neighborhood that is, located to the subject site. The proposed rezoning would see commercial neighborhood restricted, would not allow for a gradual transition between the residential land uses, and it currently surrounds the subject site. Therefore, it is not consistent with the goals or objectives of these policies. It's not consistent with Goal 12 or the subsequent policy of the community design component. It allows for uses that are way too intense for an existing community, therefore not consistent with this policy direction. Goal 17 and a subsequent policy encourages developments that improve the ambiance of the commercial development in the county. Now, this commercial neighborhood with restriction would be isolated and not unified with the surrounding uses. It is also not consistent with the East Lake Orion Community Plan. Although some of the uses are restricted, it may be beneficial to the neighborhood. However, you're still within the entrance of a residential neighborhood, which is causes a compatibility concern, as well as due to note that most likely at the time of permitting, the subject site would probably have to take access off of, I believe it's called Watson. 1 second, sorry. Yes, Watson Street. So this is this main street that the residential neighborhood to the north is going to be using most of all. So overall, the proposed rezoning would conflict with the goals, objectives of the urban service area of the East Lake Orion Park Community Plan, and it wouldn't allow for a development that is consistent with the goals, objectives, of policies of the comp plan. So therefore, Planning Commission staff is finding this proposed rezoning inconsistent with the comprehensive plan for unincorporated.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Llanos. All right, is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application? All right, do not hear anyone. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? All right, do not hear anyone. All right, back to Development Services. Anything further?
Nothing further.
All right, and applicant, anything further?
Just to clarify, I have been qualified as an expert witness in planning in the past. I apologize, I would have submitted my CV if I knew it was necessary, but I will do so in the future. So nothing further, thank you.
All right, Mr. Wright, thank you very much.
Miss
Development
Hatley,
Services,
Yeah,
yes.
I just want to put on the record that existing PD that's part of this project is limited to a two-way radio sales and service company. I just wanted to put that on the record.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Grady?
Nothing further.
All right. All right, that will close the hearing on rezoning standard 22-1221.
And the final item on tonight's agenda is agenda item D2, rezoning PD 22-0948. The applicant is Omar Chaudhry. The request is a rezone from AS 0.4 to a planned development. Sam Ball will provide staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
Thank you. Good evening. Isabel Albert with Half Associates, 1000 North Ashley Drive, Suite 900. I have a presentation for you.
Okay.
Just let me know if you can see it.
I can. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So what we have for you tonight is a rezoning to a planned development for a site that's approximately a little bit less than 4 acres. It's on the northeast side of Dixon Drive and US Highway 301. Current zoning is AS-0.4. The future land use is residential 4, and it is located in the urban service area. Just to zoom out a little bit, orient yourself. This is US 301. To the south of us is Big Bend, and to the north of us is Rodine Road. So this is a request to allow a 20,000 square foot kennel that be provided daycare, boarding, and grooming services. And as well as we are proposing a 10,000 square foot limited office building towards the rear of the property. We have hours of operations. We provided hours of operations. We are limiting the uses for the site, as well as having architecturally designed for this structure in the back. And we also have a design exception that's approved for Dixon Drive. And I have here with me Elizabeth Rodriguez, who's going to speak on that if need be. But when we first started this site, it was 6 months ago, and prior to that, we first originally started with an access on Dixon Drive, and we have these structures in the back for the office with the kennel in the front. And after that, we start receiving, and I actually received some emails from the neighbors to the east with the concerns on having access on Dixon Drive. And so we went back to the drawing board, and while we were doing the drawing board, and we reapplied for this, you'll see the second in the middle here, to have the access off of US 301. And we moved a bit these offices towards the west in order to address some of the compatibility concerns that Planning Commission staff had. And so while we were doing that, at the same time, we were having meetings with FDOT. And Libby can go more into details after that. But they basically said that, there's some great concerns that we have, the safety concerns and design concerns of this, and we would, you should have your access off of Dixon. And so that kind of made us redraw, which was not our preferred, because I did tell the opposition that we were going to have access off of 301, and we were trying everything. And so I feel bad that I do have to go back on my words. And now we're having access off of Dixon Drive. And then we also further limited the square footage of the office to 10,000 square feet and put it in one structure per Planning Commission staff suggestion. And we increased the buffer in the back because it is a residence to the east of us. There is a residential neighborhood from Dixon Drive. So these are how we ended up where we are today. And then we also need to look at, really, when we first started looking at the site, we are off of US Highway 301. And the surrounding development around us on this highway is mostly commercial. If we go through quickly, this is just south of us. This is a warehouse unit that has commercial vehicle and rentals and RV parking. It is also adjacent to, so this is where the site is. This is where we are, just to the north of us. They got approved back actually in '98 for a flex of the RCMRCs, it's on the next slide, but they received a flex in order to expand that commercial use. And they came in again in 2018. Since the land use to the south was amended to OC20, they had to request a flex of the OC20 and got supported bid approval. And with this development, they waived the buffer and screening from 20 feet to 5 feet with the type B screening. But again, there's a little history here with this site. And if we look across the street from us, there's a commercial neighborhood that was limited to 6,000 square feet. It had an access off this local road and off of 301. And again, there's some residents to the south where a 20-foot buffer with type B screening will be required. And then if we continue down again to the south, and this is further, if you could see our site, it's almost catty corner from it. They got approved for limited CN uses. They have, their 20-foot setbacks along the perimeter of the property. And again, this site does not meet commercial location criteria, as most of these sites on 301. They requested a waiver to that and found that with the design, and hence design, architectural, and buffers and screening, they supported the waiver to the commercial location criteria. And then we continue south. This is Summerfield. As you all know, this is Big Bend. This is the intersection for the commercial location criteria that they measured. But again, you'll see it's mostly all residential. Commercial along the front with residential in the back. And this is all throughout along the highway of US 301. Again, this is a BPO. They provide a 20-foot screening or 20-foot buffer with a screening, as well as hours of operation and things like that. Again, same scenario. This is BPO, could not meet the location criteria, but founded with proper design and buffers and screenings, they were supporting that. And we move along, again, CN uses, and you have commercial, again, uses to the south. So this is a scenario all throughout US 301, south of our site. Now, if you look at the north of our site, this is where you'll have the old development, residential development that occur pretty much prior to 2012. And what this is important is because right now, this is our site over here. This is that Marathon gas station that we talked about. Just adjacent to us to the north is an FDOT pond that was created due to the expansion and widening of US 301 that was done back in 2012. And then from there, we have self-storage here, we have a non-residential use here, and then we have these pockets of non-residential and commercial uses along 301. And these are all part of the large plan development. So here's why it's important. Prior to 2012, the US 301 was only a 2-lane little road, and they did major improvements to that road, as we all know, to a 4 to 6 lane in some instances. And what's been happening since then is development since then has occurred, as you can see, all along US 301, and this is, all commercial uses, non-residential uses along 301. That's the majority of the development that's occurred since the widening of the road. And that is also found with the Riverview Community Plan, where they visioned this as a highway corridor, and it even says the retail and the commercial businesses have benefit from the redesign of the US 41 corridor. So this is where you would find those uses. Future land use policies, we're in the urban service area. The compatibility, you've heard this all throughout tonight. It's not the same as, but how do you address compatibility? That is hours of operation, listed of uses, doubling the buffer, the screening. We're committed to the fence. This was per discussion with that neighbor to the east of us. Existing vegetation, and all of that is through site planning design that we come up with these to address the compatibility. And then we have gradual transition. You heard it again tonight from the Planning Commission. It says a gradual transition, it's office use, is a good gradual transition from a residential neighborhood to a commercial corridor. And that is how you address, again, the neighborhood protection, is that graduation of uses. But there are also some concerns where they said, we have some concerns because you're accessing Dixon Drive. Again, it is a local street. We understand it's a local street, but Dixon Drive was never built to the end. They just had a banner there, and they were supposed to connect to Simmon, to this street, which I have in the next slide, but I'll show you that. But it is on 301. It is fronting 301. The access is probably not on Collector Road, but it is facing 301, which meets the intent of this policy. And then this just brings up to the commercial location criteria, which you've heard quite a lot today. You have to look at the compatibility issue. The compatibility, as we talked about previous policy, it's not the same as long as you have good planning technique. And specific findings of why would you support a commercial location criteria. In this instance, as you can see, Dixon Drive, keeps calling it Dixon Road, and I'm sorry about that. This is Dixon Drive. It did finish, and it was supposed to connect to Summerfield Boulevard, but they just never did that connection. It would have been a collector road, but it's functioning as a local road because it doesn't have that exit. And the unique circumstances is when we looked at this site, we also looked at the area and found that this was not a use that would be incompatible with the area. It fits in the area. There's other development on 301 where they did not meet the commercial location criteria and have addressed through different, again, planning tools to address that. We had no objections from reviewing agencies. We've also got support from Development Services staff that prepared some conditions, and I believe they're going to submit revised conditions because in the set that was in front of you did not have this one commitment where we committed to architectural design on all the office commercial portion of it, office building portion part of it. But I should have started with, I'm a certified planner. I have been in the area for 20 years. I have done 10 years of it working at the county, looking at the uses, looking at the comprehensive plan, and looking at land development code. And I feel like the commercial location criteria, considering the surroundings, should be waived. This is a unique circumstance to be where it is, and the access on Dixon Drive is not our choosing. It is for, the site without it would be landlocked because we cannot get access on 301. So with me, I have Libby, if you have any questions, or I can reserve some of our time. I believe I have some time reserved, 5 minutes, that she can use in rebuttal if you want.
There's about 2 minutes and 40 seconds left.
Okay, so I'll save that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
For
Do you have
rebuttal,
any
understand.
questions?
I might have questions for you at rebuttal.
Okay.
But
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Development Services, please.
Good evening, Sam Ball, the Hillsborough County Development Services. A revised report was submitted. The change was needed to add a condition that the office building must be architecturally finished on all 4 sides. The applicant is requesting to rezone from AS04 to planned development to allow the site to be developed for kennel, professional office, medical office on a 3.94 acre property located at the northeast corner of Highway 301 South and Dixon Drive. The subject property is located approximately 3/4 of a mile north of the Big Bend Road and 301 intersection in the Riverview Community Planning Area. The property is also in the urban surface area and is designated residential 4 on the future land use map. Development in the general vicinity consists of a mix of uses: single-family residential, vacant residential, general commercial, institutional, and office. The neighboring properties include a vacant site owned by FDOT to the north, single-family residential to the east, a mini warehouse facility to the south of Dixon Drive, a townhome community, convenience store, gas pumps, and vacant residential across US 301 to the west. If Plan Development 220948 is approved, the development would be limited to a kennel of up to 20,000 square feet of gross floor area and office space with up to 10,000 square feet of space, which would result in an FAR of 0.17. The minimum setback requirements would be 100 feet from the north, 90 feet from the east, 60 feet from the south, and 30 feet from the west boundaries. Building coverage would be limited to 25%. Impervious surface area would not be allowed to exceed 70%. All the buildings would be limited to 20 feet tall. The office building must be architecturally finished on all 4 sides and separated from the residential property to the east by the required 90-foot setback and a 40-foot landscape buffer and type B screening with a 6-foot tall PVC fence. The office uses will also be restricted to the hours of 6:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. The kennel would be allowed to provide daycare, boarding, and grooming services. I'd also like to add that the kennel is currently a permissible conditional use under the current AS04 zoning designation. But going forward, if approved, the county engineer will also approve a design exception for substandard roadway improvements to Dixon Drive. So based on the proximity of US 301 South and the adjacent zoning and uses, staff finds that the proposed site configuration, architectural requirements, and limited hours of operation would minimize the impacts on the residential properties in the vicinity and is compatible with the existing zoning districts and development pattern of the area. Staff recommends approval of the request subject to conditions. That concludes my presentation if you have any questions.
All right, no questions for you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Planning Commission.
Carlianos with Planning Commission staff. The subject site is located in the urban service area and within the limits of the Riverview and South Shore Area Wide Systems Community Plan. The applicant, again, is requesting to rezone this property from agricultural single-family estate, AS 0.4, to planned development to allow for 20,000 square feet dog kennel and 10,000 square feet of business professional office. Subject site is, again, located within the residential 4 future land use category, which can be considered for a maximum density of 4 dwelling units an acre or a maximum intensity of 0.25 floor area ratio. Typical uses include, but are not limited to, residential, suburban scale neighborhood commercial, office uses, and multi-purpose projects and mixed-use developments. Now, non-residential uses are subject to locational criteria, and the site currently does not meet locational criteria, and a waiver has been requested. Now, the subject site has residential 4 future land use category located to the north, east, and south of the subject site. You got residential 9 and residential 6 located to the west of the subject site. And further to the south is of the property is office commercial 20. The request is not compatible with Comprehensive Plan Policy 1.4. The subject site is currently classified as vacant land and agricultural single-family estates. There are properties to the north that are classified as public institutional use, single-family residential, light industrial uses, plan development zoning, and then you have single-family residential as well, agricultural and single-family conventional zoning to the east. There are a lot of single-family uses within the vicinity. So the subject site, again, does not meet commercial locational criteria, and based on the waiver that they requested, Planning Commission staff is not in support. Dixon Drive is not considered a major local road. It does not connect to at least 2 or more collector or higher roadways. It doesn't have a primary access road to at least 500 dwelling units from a collector or arterial road. The nearest qualifying intersection is south at Big Bend Road and US Highway 301. And per policy 22.2, the future land use element requires that at least 75% of the subject site must fall within the 900 feet of the intersection. The subject site is way over. It's 3,700 linear feet away from that intersection, and consequently, the site does not meet commercial locational criteria, and that's why the waiver was required. The applicant, again, they submitted the waiver. They indicated that Dixon Drive was supposed to be a collector road and that it was never connected between Summerfield Boulevard and US Highway 301. The waiver had also stated that it is compatible with the commercial land uses along 301, and the applicant asserts that the mini warehouse to the south was approved for a flex of the OC 20 with a 5-foot setback from the residential lot to the east. To clarify for the record, the PD that was approved down to the south, which is that warehouse storage area, it does not have access off of Dixon. It has access off of US Highway 301, and by looking at the proposed conditions of that PD that was last approved in 2018, and I believe there was another PRS approved afterwards, it does indicate some type of mitigation efforts next to the single family, and as well as by eliminating access off of Dixon. So Planning Commission staff didn't find that as supportable to the commercial locational criteria waiver. Now these, let's see over here. Okay, so it's not compatible with future land use policy 16.5, which requires higher intensity non-residential uses established in neighborhoods to be, restricted to collector arterials. The site, again, only has access off of that local road, so it doesn't meet that policy. It is also not consistent with policy 16.2, which the eastern portion of the plan development is proposing an intensity of 10,000 square feet of business professional use adjacent to single-family residential uses. New development must demonstrate a gradual transition of intensities between different land uses. While the site does orient most of the intense use, Dog Kennel, towards US 301, it still places higher intensity non-residential use adjacent to the single-family properties. Due to this lack of gradual transition of uses, the applicant has proposed, a 40-foot buffer with type B screening and some of the conditions that are placed in that list. However, Planning Commission staff doesn't see this as sufficient to help mitigate for this type of intense use next to the single-family residential. Now, while the commercial use with a residential appearance, again, may try to appear that they're mitigating to the nearby residential, again, this placement of commercial uses outside of that designated commercial node is not consistent with Objective 16 and the subsequent policies of the comp plan. So overall, the development will produce an intensity at a scale that would not be compatible with the single-family development pattern in the area. So at this point, Planning Commission staff is recommending inconsistency with the overall comprehensive plan policies and objectives of unincorporated Hillsborough County.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Llanos. All right. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application? All right, don't hear anyone. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Okay.
My name is John Murdoch. I live on 10702 Dixon Drive. I've lived there over 35, 40 years. I think I speak for most of my neighborhood. No one wants an entry on Dixon Drive. It would be a hardship for everybody in our neighborhood to try to get out on 301. Those cars come by there, they don't do 55, they're doing 60, 70 miles an hour. We have a school up the street. They cross that intersection right there. They don't stop at the stop signs. That leaves us hanging out into the traffic. And there's been numerous accidents out there, numerous deaths out there. The property is listed on 301. It should have an entry on 301, not on Dixon Drive. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, does anyone else wish to speak in opposition?
Yes, and also...
Please come forward. We need you on the microphone. Thank you.
Kathy Moore, 10603 Dixon Drive. And we have a lot of other people that are here in support of not having this. If they would all stand up, I'd appreciate it. Opposition? Oh, these are all opposition. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm Kathy Moore from 10603 Dixon Drive. I've lived on Dixon Drive since 1968 and enjoy the country life that my husband and I share with our horses, cats, dogs, and other animals on our 3-acre property. Our neighbors and us are not against development when it is done correctly. Taking away the lifestyle and the freedom to come and go from your residence isn't doing it the right way when there's another way to enter a business, Highway 301. It might be expensive for the developer who will make money, but it will be a hardship for the residents and could possibly cause property values to go down. So who will benefit? Not the Dixon Drive residents. We fight the craziness on 301 every time we leave our neighborhood. Why do we need to add waiting in line behind customer cars on our street, Dixon, when they could be backed up on the property of the business they are supporting? Please put your home on Dixon Drive, where you live a quiet, slow-paced life with animals, children, and friends, and see if you want crazy, fast-paced world of 301 to enter your life. This is why I don't support this change, this zoning change. Thank you. Oh, and our residents did meet with the owners, and we discussed this and stuff, but we were kind of misled that they were going to do 301. Then now we find out they're going to do Dixon. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Oh. Yes, sir. And are the other persons in opposition, do you wish to speak as well, or you just, okay. All right. Does one of you want to speak?
I think it's just
okay, just
me.
All right. So the others who are here, would you want to come forward and just state your name and address for the record and just put that in the record? Okay. So after this gentleman speaks, we'll have you do that, please. Yes, sir.
Brent Davis, 10609 Dixon Drive. And as you can see, I think there's about 15 or 20 of us here tonight. There are only about 40 families on Dixon Drive, so that represents about half of our community are here tonight. As stated previously, the property address is 12850 US 301. It is not a Dixon Drive address. The adjacent property that was referenced before is 12902 US 301, and it too has 301 access only and was denied access on Dixon Drive previously, as I think Isabel mentioned. One other thing that we're concerned about is a zoning change would allow the developer to just flip the property, sell the property, and do something else with it, realizing they would have to go back through the process. Again, we have been run over by development in our area. Most of these people that are here tonight and the rest of our residents are retired people that have lived there for a long time and didn't buy into all this development to begin with. And we have fought numerous battles on every one of these properties. So this is just another one. The accident history that was mentioned, I looked at a site today, and do you realize that 6 of the top 10 worst intersections in Hillsborough County are in Riverview on 301? And we certainly are as bad as any of them, although we weren't listed. Now, Cowley, the street across where the gas station is, directly across from the applicant's property, really that's where the signal needs to be put. For regardless of what happens with this hearing, the signal needs to be put there. The school children that Mr. Murdoch mentioned walk across there, and they don't pay attention very good. They just walk across there, and so the people trying to turn into Dixon Drive, come off of Dixon Drive, it's very dangerous right now. Adding this in there is only going to make it a whole lot worse, especially if it's not done properly. I'm also concerned about the placement of the construction equipment when they go to develop this site. It's going to be placed on Dixon Drive. There's a piece of it sitting there right now that we passed on our way here tonight. Now, FDOT did not deny the owner access to the property. They said, we don't recommend that you do it. Easy for them to say, they don't live on Dixon Drive. And I think the applicant could get access to 301. They're just going to have to spend a lot more money and a lot more time in order to get that access. But I think in the long run, that's really the only answer here. Accessing Dixon Drive is just totally unacceptable to us, and it's just dangerous all the way around. It's really a huge safety issue. I strongly advise that, that you deny this application as it stands. I don't think any of us here want to deny the owner access to his property, and we realize that it's going to be developed. But access on Dixon Drive is just totally unacceptable to all of us, and we urge you to deny this application. I thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Anyone else in opposition, if you would just like to please come by the microphone and state your name and your address into the microphone, and then sign in with the clerk so that you have your name on the record.
Lorianne Frattini, 10709 Dixon Drive.
You might also say that you're in opposition.
In opposition.
Thank you.
Allison Fernandez, 10606 Dixon Drive, and I am definitely opposed.
Byron Moore, 10603 Dixon Drive, and I'm opposed.
Steve Tran, 11001 Dixon Drive, and I oppose.
James Hance, 10802 Dixon Drive, and I'm definitely opposed.
Brenda Hance, 10802 Dixon Drive. I'm opposed.
Renee Stroud, 10602 Dixon Drive, and I am opposed.
Charles Weldon, 10707 Dixon Drive, and I am opposed.
Daniel Parker, 10718 Dixon Drive. I'm opposed.
Colleen Motka, 10714 Dixon Drive, and I'm opposed.
Kathleen Rowland, 10725 Dixon Drive. I'm opposed.
Elizabeth Pete, 10725 Dixon Drive. I'm opposed.
Andrew Mazurek, 10714 Dixon Drive, and I'm opposed.
All right, thank you. We still have time. Clerk, we still have time on the opposition? Okay. Did you have something further you wanted to?
Yeah, I just meant to bring...
State your name, please.
Kathy Moore, 10603 Dixon Drive.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to bring up that we did request to have this intersection looked at, possibly a light, back in before it was 4-laned, and I have the article that was in the Tribune if that's of any interest.
Well, if you wish to submit it into the record, you may. You'll have to submit that original that you have in your hand, and you won't get it back. It'll go into the record. But you can do that if you wish.
Okay.
Okay. You would need to give it to the clerk over here.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Now, if I could ask everyone, please, to sort of line up down that wall over there, and we'll make room at the microphone. And first, we're going to go back to Development Services. Was there anything further Development Services had?
Nothing further unless you have questions.
Okay, no questions for Development Services. Then we'll go back to the applicant. And the applicant has 5 minutes plus, I think there was a couple of minutes left over. I would like to hear from the Transportation.
Yes.
And I would like to hear either of you, please, exactly what did FDOT require?
Yes.
And what improvements would be proposed on Dixon?
Okay.
Thank
so,
you.
Like I said, with me I have Libby, but just for the record again, we met with the neighbors and they said, if no access on Dixon Drive, you're not going to see us again. So we're like, all right. So we did try the effort to get on US 301 in order to not have this. And obviously, but we were not permitted. So, Libby, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Libby Rodriguez, 18156 Sandy Point Drive, Tampa, Florida. And I have a master's degree in urban planning and 30 plus years experience. I actually worked reviewing traffic studies for the county for 4 or 5 years in there. So, thank you.
Thank you for raising that up. We'll give you just a second to adjust.
I'm taller.
Yes. Are you an engineer, a transportation engineer?
Transportation planner.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So DOT actually said, and this is significant, that 4 groups recently in the last several years have approached them about this site and about having access to 301. And the reason it is significant is because nobody has been able to design a driveway onto 301 to their satisfaction, and that's why in this busy corridor that they've been showing you, this site remains undeveloped. So what it is, without getting too into the weeds, is that there's a guardrail along 301 in front of this property, and so the guardrail, the driveway would have to go in the middle of where the guardrail is right now. So then you'd have to put 2 little pieces of guardrail on either side of the new driveway. The small piece of guardrail that would have to go between, on our north side, there's a little creek and a bridge. Okay, so the little piece of guardrail that would have to go between the bridge and the new driveway would have to be built to today's standards, and the guardrail is currently pinned to the little bridge, but you can't do that anymore. According to today's standards, it would have to be freestanding, and given the short length of it and the slope that it's being built on, the 4 groups that have approached them previously, 2 of them hired engineers that specialize in designing these types of guardrails. They could not come up with a design with the current standards that was acceptable to DOT to replace the guardrail. DOT will not waive the requirement for the guardrail. And so since there's no satisfactory design for the guardrail, we can't waive the requirement for the guardrail. We can't break that guardrail that's there right now and put in a driveway. It's, in my understanding, it's physically impossible to put a driveway on 301, and that's why this property has not been developed yet. And without access to Dixon Drive, however this ends up being developed, the property is going to be landlocked. I was going to say one other thing really fast. The comment about not wanting access to access Dixon is a little bit in conflict with the comments about crashes/accidents, because if we were to access 301, we'd be introducing a new conflict point. DOT said we would have to line up with the median opening in front of Cowley Road, which tees into 301 on the other side of the street. So then there'd be a new conflict point. There would be lefts in, lefts out, and that would have more conflicting movements than us accessing at Dixon, where there's already a curb cut for Dixon, and it's only right in and right out movements, which have less friction than the left in and left out movements. So that's it. Any questions?
Yes.
Oh, wait. What? Oh, okay. So really fast. Dixon, we've got a design exception, and between our proposed driveway and the 301 intersection, we are building it almost to complete TS, typical Section 7 standards, there was almost enough right-of-way to build it completely to standards. We were just lacking a little on both sides of the street. So we've got like 9.25, 9.5 foot lanes right now. We're building the 12-foot lanes. And then on our side of Dixon, in order to build it so from the center line to our side, we are building it to complete TS7 standards because we're going to dedicate the right-of-way to put the sidewalk. And then from the center line to the other side where you saw that big, the big warehouse building, we're building it completely to TS7 standards except lacking a few feet of right-of-way. We're not putting sidewalk on the south side. So the lack of sidewalk on the south side is the only thing that keeps it from being completely rebuilt to standard by us.
Okay, just a couple of questions in, and I'm looking at the property, from the Google Street view, and I see Cali Road across from the property.
Yeah.
And I see the guardrail.
Yeah.
And it appears there is some kind of a trail or a riding path along 301 there.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what the guardrail is there for, or part of the reason the guardrail is there.
It would be there anyway just because of the road, but also, it serves that too. Yeah.
So it looks like the guardrail starts at about where the Cali Road intersection is. And so was it your explanation then that if you had an entrance, the problem is if an entrance to this property were to be on 301, that it would cause a break in that guardrail.
Yes.
And there would have to be a little tiny piece of the guardrail on one side and then the rest of it on the other side.
Right.
And it was somehow impossible to do that because, and that part I guess I don't quite understand.
Yeah, it's...
The design is impossible then, right?
The design is impossible to today's standards to build the two smaller pieces on that slope without pinning it to the bridge, which is no longer allowable.
Okay, all right. That.
Do you see how it's connected to the bridge? Okay.
No, I don't, but I understand what you're
okay.
saying now.
Okay.
I just missed that part. Okay. Then if the access point were on Dixon, how far in from 301 would it be on Dixon?
I don't remember. Like 300 feet. What's the dimension between? I just can't remember between. Sorry, I just can't remember how far we are from the intersection. We're checking. Yeah, I just can't remember.
From your site plan, it looks like it's roughly in the middle of the road frontage on that side.
If you want, put it up here too.
If you can't give me exact footage, that's okay. It's just...
She's saying about 2. I thought it was about 3, between 2 to 300 feet.
2 to 300 feet
yeah.
from... Okay. So that's really the part of Dixon Road that would be affected then, about 200 or 300 feet in from the intersection.
Right. And then, so we're not anticipating, unless any of them would come to the facility, any traffic, from our driveway
back in.
East. So there would only be the traffic from our driveway west, and that's the section that we're improving.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then, so let me just ask you one more question, Ms. Rodriguez.
Sure. Yeah.
Is it your professional opinion then that there's no other way to develop this site without having access on Dixon Road?
Yes, it is.
Based on your experience and your conversations with FDOT and so forth, or what?
Yes, and just to let you know too, when we first started talking about accessing 301, The developer was happy about it. The property would be worth more, especially if we lined up with Cowley and we had talked to DOT about putting a signal in there, and boom, there he is at a signalized intersection, access to 301. He could, you know, the property would be worth more. We tried to access, we really wanted to access 301. We would like to access 301. We physically can't figure out how to do it.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anything else that you wanted to?
Not me, but
All right. You're over your time, but I had some questions. So did you have, just briefly?
No, I was just going to say this completes our application or presentation unless you had any questions.
I don't have any further questions. Thank you so much.
But I do want to, I also would like to just introduce the document from FDOT that has the history with the 4 different people meeting with them.
You can put that into the record.
Thank you.
Okay. No, sir, I'm sorry. The hearing is, with this, the hearing is closed on rezoning PD 22-0948. Okay, and that concludes our meeting for this evening.